I'm back with Alex Funderburke. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Kennedy. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. We've had a lot that's happened within the past couple of weeks as far as football goes. So of course, I had to bring in the expert himself to talk about some football. Let's just start it off with the Cotton Bowl, UF Oklahoma. UF was pretty upset about this game. Just kind of starting off, what were your thoughts of the overall game?
I mean, for Kyle Trask to come out and throw three picks in the first 11 minutes was not something I saw coming, was not something I think anyone saw coming. But I kind of expected Oklahoma to run away with it, considering UF was without their top six receivers. Once Pitts opted out, I was kind of like, okay, Oklahoma was going to win this. It's just a matter of how much, and they came out and just smacked Florida right in the face and dominated.
And smacked indeed. But I mean, just kind of breaking down this UF team, we've seen them lose to a couple of different schools. LSU, who's had a down year, Texas A&M, who was ranked, and of course Alabama, and now Oklahoma. But is this a UF team that you expected this loss from, or was this something that kind of shocked you coming into this game?
I think if they had all of their wide receivers, I think it would have been a little bit closer, but I probably still would have given the nod to Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma's just deep, and they've been playing ever since they lost back-to-back games. They've been playing great since then. But this Florida team's weird because, like, on paper they should be really good, but then they find themselves in close games against seemingly everybody. Uh, Losing to LSU at home as 20-point favorites is kind of crazy. Um, can't really excuse that, although it pretty much was because of that Marco Wilson throwing a shoe. But um, no, the Florida team's weird because they should be great. They should be a playoff contender, but they're not. They kind of play up and down to their competition.
Definitely. And I mean, with Kyle Trask too, a lot of people were wondering, with Felipe Franks leaving, could he be that guy for UF? And of course, having this loss, does that take anything away from Trask's game? Especially, he's one of the contenders for the Heisman. Does that take away from what he was doing, or is this a loss that we kind of have to give to him, especially, playing without your top receivers? And Oklahoma played a really good defensive game.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's very hard to take away the season he had because he had such an amazing season this season. But three picks in 11 minutes is definitely going to hurt your draft stock. Luckily for him, the Heisman votes were in before that game, so that it's not going to hurt him there. But I think if the Heisman votes weren't in by the time that game was played, it's a different story. It definitely would hurt his Heisman chances. But no, it definitely will hurt his draft stock a little bit.
And speaking of draft stock, we had a quarterback with Miami moving down to the Cheez It Bowl who got hurt. And I don't know if we'd consider it costing Miami the game, but it was definitely a determining factor. So, what did you think of the De'Aaron King injury with Miami and how Miami kind of recovered after his injury?
I mean, it really sucked to see him go down. I mean, he's such a amazing player to watch, and from what I've heard about him, he's an even better person. So to see him get hurt really sucks, and especially, I mean, he said he was coming back to play next season. I think the day before the bowl game. So to see that really hurt. But I mean, N'Kosi Perry came in, and I mean, threw for 228 yards, two touchdowns. I mean, he kept Miami in the game. I do think if Miami had King, I do think Miami comes out on top. But I mean, Perry did as good as you can ask him to in that situation.
And that's another conversation that a lot of people were having with N'Kosi Perry was he doing enough with what he was given? I mean, he's a redshirt junior. He's been here for a couple of years, grew under King and other quarterbacks, but was this a good performance? I mean, he throws for 228 yards and three touchdowns. So, I mean, is this enough from N'Kosi Perry, or did you expect more, or was this enough for what Miami had?
I think that's about what you would want from a quarterback coming in on after an injury. I mean, you would like that completion percentage to be a little bit higher. He was 19 of 34, but I mean, it's a tough situation. You're not expecting to play, and then your starter gets hurt. So um, you kind of have to live with that if you're a Miami fan. You can't really be too mad at him, but No, if there's one thing that they could harp on, it is the completion percentage.
Of course. And I mean, do we put most of this game on Miami's defense and, of course, their offense? Because they're still playing with Mike Harley, you're still playing with Derek Chaney Jr., you're still playing with different people. So is this just an accumulation of not having King, or was this the offense that could have done better, or the defense? What did you think that was really what lost it for Miami?
I think the defense lost it because, I mean, Oklahoma State didn't have Chuba Hubbard, and he's one of, if not the best running back in the country. And they let Spencer Sanders kind of run it. He was their leading rusher with only 45 yards. So you're losing one of the best running backs in the country, easily the best in the Big 12, and you're letting the guy Spencer Sanders throw, which is not his thing. He's hand the ball off to the running back and just let Chuba go to work. And then you're giving up 45 yards on the ground and him rushing. You have to stop Spencer Sanders, because if there's no Chuba, there's really no excuse for losing Oklahoma State. Spencer Sanders, yes, he's good, but he definitely needs a good running back to be great.
Oklahoma State's one of those teams that just kind of popped up in there this year. We didn't, especially playing in the conference that they're playing in, I did not really see them coming into this game, but they're ranked. And I mean, they were neck and neck with Miami. So did you expect this from Oklahoma State? Like you were saying, playing without their best running back and one of the best running backs in college football right now. Did you expect this, especially for Spencer Sanders? Did you expect him to play this well or no?
I didn't expect him to go 305, 4 touchdowns, and no turnovers. That was really impressive. But no, I mean, he's more than capable of doing this. He just hasn't had to, because he's had Chuba to give the ball to. So no, I definitely didn't see him doing that good. I thought they'd be able to keep it close, which, I mean, they won a close game, so it kind
Yeah.
of worked out. But I picked Miami in that game. But I do think if King wasn't hurt, I do think they come out on top. But Oklahoma State did enough to get the win.
Most definitely. So moving on to the Rose Bowl, and a team that I was pretty shocked made it this far this season was Notre Dame. A lot of people want to talk about Alabama and how they pretty much smacked Notre Dame, but Notre Dame has had a pretty good year. I mean, you're 11-2. Your only losses are this game in Clemson. They're still not playing in a conference, but what did you see out of Notre Dame this season and just the game that they played in the Rose Bowl?
Can we stop putting Notre Dame in these games? I mean, like, since 1994, they're 0-9 in big time bowl games or playoff games. They've been outscored by 170 points. They lose on average by 19 points a game. Like, put someone in there who can give them a chance to prove themselves. Put Cincy in there, put Coastal in there, give them a chance to prove themselves. Because time and time again, Notre Dame comes into these big bowl games or playoff games and they just fall on their face. They in the past, we called it Clemsoning when a team got to a big game and just lost. It's since 1994, it's you're Notre Daming. Like, you get to this big point and you can't win. So stop putting a college football playoff committee. I know you're watching this. Stop putting Notre Dame in these games, please.
That's the whole thing. Stop putting Notre Dame here.
Yes,
But I
yes.
mean,
Stop
even
putting
with
Notre Dame there.
Ian Book and how he played, was this a game that you were shocked? Because I mean, in my opinion, this was not one of Ian Book's best games this season. This was none of their, I mean, Kyron Williams didn't play as well as he could have played. Their defense wasn't on par either. I don't even think that this was one of Alabama's best games because we didn't even get to see any type of pressure on Alabama. So was this should we force Notre Dame into a conference? Should we force them to play against steady competition, or do we just continue to let them playing different competitions every single season and end up in these bowl games?
I mean, so I kind of expected Notre Dame to lose by more, but like you said, Alabama kind of was just coasting the entire time. Like, it never felt like Alabama was in trouble. I mean, from the start. But it would be cool to see Notre Dame in a conference. But they kind of have a nice gig now where they play 6 ACC games a year, but they're not in the ACC, which they do want to keep their independent status because they've been independent since they started college football. So I don't think there will be a way to force them into a conference just because they're Notre Dame and Notre Dame kind of does what they want. But I do think they should be forced into a conference eventually, just because I think honestly, I think everyone should be in a conference. There's 5 independents right now, and I think everybody should be in a conference just because eventually I want college football to get to a point where if you win your conference, you're in the playoff. You got a 16 team playoff, all 10 conference champs, and then 6 at large bids and no independents. But I don't know when that will happen. But when that happens, I do think we should do away with independence.
I definitely agree with that. I think everyone should be in a conference. I don't even know why independence was ever allowed, but one of the things I was watching in this game was just the versatility of Mac Jones and if it is really there. A lot of people have talked about how he can't really run the ball. We saw that he had that little awkward slide where it looked like he almost
That
took
was
his
the
own leg out.
weirdest. That was the weirdest slide I've ever seen.
But can we expect more out of Mac Jones, especially he is also one of the finalists for the Heisman? Do you want to see more out of Mac Jones? You know, improving his draft stock and just if he has a career in the pros, which I'm sure that he does. Do you need to see more out of Mac Jones, or is this enough? Is his passing yards enough to make him a good pro?
I think Mac Jones is he's more than a game manager, but he's not like an elite playmaker. Like he's not going to make the big mistake, but he's also not going to be like Aaron Rodgers or something. Like he's somewhere in between like Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers. Like that's where I see him in the NFL. But no, I don't really need to see more from him just because like his roster's stacked. Like he doesn't have to be the quarterback who runs out and scrambles. He has Najee Harris to give the ball to, or um, he has Devontae Smith to throw to. So he has weapons all around him to where he doesn't have to be the guy that runs and has those really awkward slides.
And awkward indeed, because we saw the blood after that one. I was like, oh my goodness. Someone needs to help Mac Jones.
Yes, he needs to go to the baseball team and learn how to slide. That's about it.
Definitely. One of the other games, of course, that we saw was a big upset was Clemson Ohio State. And I think Ohio State is one of those teams that has been getting a ton of ridicule because they didn't play as many games as any of the other teams that were in the finals did. But just what did you see out of Ohio State in the Clemson game? Just your top thoughts overall.
I mean, Justin Fields kind of has to be everyone's biggest takeaway. I mean, getting nailed in the ribs like he did, and to come back and have as many touchdowns as he did in completions. I mean, 22 for 28, 6 touchdowns is really, really, really impressive. I'm not going to say I was totally surprised because Ohio State on paper is at worst the third best team talent wise. But I'm still on the train that they don't deserve to be there. Only playing 6 games before the playoff and needing your conference to change their rules midseason to get you that 6 game, you're not really warranted a spot in the playoff. But that's what the committee decided. And I think they'll be able to challenge Alabama. I don't know if they'll win, but I think they'll be able to keep it close.
I mean, even though they only played what 7 games, including this bowl game this season, Clemson has played 12 games, and they come out and they expose a lot of Clemson that we didn't even think could be exposed. So does that eliminate them from the conversation if you didn't play enough games, or are you still kind of they should have played a little bit more in order to be here?
They definitely should have still played a little bit more to be there. I mean, I've been saying since their first couple games that they're easily a top 3 team in the country, but if they're only playing 6, 7 games, that they aren't deserving of it. I think people confuse the best teams with the most deserving teams, and they're not always the same. I think Alabama is deserving and the best. I think Clemson was deserving and one of the best. I don't think Ohio State was both deserving and the best. I think they were just the best. Um, I think you could have I would have rather seen Cincinnati there. They were deserving and one of the top teams in the country, or a Coastal Carolina, um, just because they played more games. They won all of their games on top of that. I think it would have been, I don't want to say more fun because Ohio State made it more fun and they won, but it would have been more interesting. You would have had a new matchup because we've seen these four teams in the playoffs seemingly every year. It's kind of getting old.
Most certainly. But one of the things that I was surprised about watching this game was Trevor Lawrence. I mean, you throw for over 400 or 400 yards and you still lose the game. He threw that one interception, but he also threw for two touchdowns. So, what was it about Trevor Lawrence that really shocked you about this game? I mean, he struggled in the pocket, could not handle Ohio State's defense's pressure in the pocket. So, was it the mustache that lasted for Trevor Lawrence? What was it about this game? Why do you think that they lost this game offensively?
I think it was hard for Trevor Lawrence to be the Trevor Lawrence we all saw once Ohio State took away Travis Etienne. They took away their running game, and Ohio State was just able to pin their ears back and rush the passer, and Clemson's O line couldn't hold up. I mean, if you don't look at Justin Fields' stat line, 33 for 48, 400 yards and two touchdowns is a really good game. But because Justin Fields threw six touchdown passes and only had six incompletions, it looks like Trevor Lawrence had a bad game. But no, I mean, he still did Trevor Lawrence like things. It was just harder for him because he didn't have a run game going. Sermon for Ohio State had like 180 yards rushing. So you had Fields and their running back doing good, where it was just Trevor Lawrence on Clemson. I think if Etienne got any run game going, I mean, if he had just like 85, 90 yards, just something to take the pressure off Trevor Lawrence, I think Clemson might have won that game.
And then going into the Alabama Ohio State game that we're going to see next week, do you think just seeing how Ohio State's defense was able to shut down the run game for Travis Etienne, is this something that we can expect them to do for Alabama, or is Alabama talented enough? Because we see Devontae Smith and just their other receivers. Of course, Najee Harris is going to hurdle over somebody. But is this something that we can expect their defense to really be a stopping force for Alabama? Because, like I said, they have versatile offense. So is this defense, are they going to have any type of trouble keeping Alabama's offense contained, or based on this game, do you think that they'll be a contender?
They're gonna have to stop. They're gonna have to slow down that offense somehow. Because if they don't, and it's a track meet, I think Bama's gonna come away with it because I think just the versatility of Bama's defense can slow down Ohio State just enough. So if they're scoring drive for drive, it's going to be Bama coming out on top. The only way Ohio State has a shot is if their defense can get 3, 4, 5 stops. And they're going to have to force Mac Jones into a turnover too. They're going to have to disguise some coverage, disguise a couple blitzes, do something, because if he doesn't have a turnover, there's no way Alabama loses.
And I mean, we've seen Mac Jones as well, just his ability to, I mean, rush out of the pocket. He stays on his feet. He's very fast on his feet, which is great for his size. So is it possible to force a turnover out of Mac Jones, or have we seen just the versatility that he can do in the pocket?
It's going to be real hard because he's smart. He's not going to throw the ball into like double or triple coverage. He's not gonna make he doesn't make the big mistake. And I think coming into the season, I did not expect that out of him, because in the games we saw him in Auburn against Auburn, he didn't look that impressive last season. So coming into the season, I did not expect Mac Jones to be what he is now, but it's truly impressive because he stays out of trouble and he knows when to throw the ball away. If there's a blitz coming and he doesn't want to force it in the coverage, he'll just throw it out of bounds. And if somehow you're going to force a turnover from him, you're going to have to disguise it, because at the line, he's able to recognize the coverage. Ohio State's going to have to disguise something if they have any hope of forcing a turnover.
Two really great teams, two great quarterbacks. So who do you have winning this finals game?
I got Bama coming out on top by 2 possessions. I think they'll win by 14. I just think Bama is too much for Ohio State. I think Justin Fields is going to make things interesting. I think he's too good not to make things interesting. And especially now that they're trusting Sermon to run the ball, they'll keep it close, but I do think Bama will come out on top.
I completely agree with that. I'm hoping Ohio State will come through, but I think, like you said, Alabama's just too much versatility, especially on that defense. I mean, goodness, Patrick Surtain is playing so well that I don't even think they'll throw in his direction. But moving on, we have the
Yeah, no,
Heisman.
they shouldn't throw in his direction.
No, they should not.
Yep,
We
no.
have the Heisman being announced tonight. Who do you have? I mean, we have a wide receiver who's in the finals for the Heisman for the first time. Do you think Devontae Smith takes this award this year, or do you have Mac Jones, Kyle Trask? Who do you have as your Heisman winner?
I think it has to be Devontae Smith. I mean, 20 touchdowns, 1,600 yards. I mean, he's easily had the best season in college football. If it's not him, they need to just change the award to just being a quarterback award, because you can't make an, I don't think you can realistically make an argument for any of the other candidates this season in comparison to what he's done this year.
But I mean, regarding Devontae Smith, do we want him to win because he is a wide receiver and this has pretty much been considered a quarterback award, or is it just he's had the best season out of all of these guys? He has to win it. Which one is really why you think he'll win the Heisman?
I think he's had the best season, but then if Trevor Lawrence didn't miss those 2 games to COVID early in the season, I think he would be the winner, just because Trevor Lawrence, in comparison to Trask and Jones, has similar stats with 2 less games, which is absolutely insane. And if he played those 2 games, I think he blows them out of the water statistically. So if Trevor Lawrence played those 2 games, it's him. But I think Devontae Smith and Trevor Lawrence are the 2 best players in the country, and Devontae Smith has had the better season this year, so it should go to him.
And I mean, of course, Najee Harris dropped out of the race a little bit earlier, but could we see more running backs coming into the Heisman race? Should this just be a quarterback award, or should we open it up to be, you know, wide receivers, running backs, and just players in general that have really good seasons?
I think it should be the best player in the country, regardless of who that is. I mean, we saw it in 2012. Manti Te'o was a finalist as a linebacker, or Dominican Sue on the D line when he was at Nebraska. They've been finalists. And I think the last defensive player to win it was Charles Woodson at Michigan. But if Devontae Smith wins it tonight, he'll be the first wide receiver since Desmond Howard. So it's been a while since a wide receiver's won it. And I think the last running back was Derrick Henry. So it's been a while since a running back's won it, but I definitely think it's possible. It should be possible. It's the best player in college football. It shouldn't just be limited to a quarterback.
We'll definitely have to see. Their votes are in, so we're going to be seeing tonight. Thank you so much, Alex, for joining me. I hope that Alabama will listen to your advice and beat Ohio State. And I hope that Trevor Lawrence will shave the mustache and get back to business. Thank you
For
again,
sure. Thanks
Alex.
for having me on.
Of course.